his work very much grows from one book to the next, and you can't really just like read the third critique. Well, they're called the critiques. Like the first critique is critique of pure reason, second critique practical reason, third critique judgment, critique of judgment. Um, you can't really read those without having read them in order, except nobody reads the second critique because it's boring. Um, but and you can also read the groundwork to the metaphysical morals and basically get most of what you need from that one. Um, but his work is extremely synthetic in that sense and developmental. This is what like Hegel gets so excited about and creates the phenomenology of spirit. Um, as a kind of, well, development of that. um, all of the critiques are about interest, or about, you could say, purposiveness or vocation. That's kind of the core idea of Kant's entire philosophy. The first one is, what is the interest or purpose or vocation of reason? Like, how can we use reason? How do we put it to work, right? That's kind of what a vocation is. Like, what is the calling to which reason is the answer? And he wants to say, like, 90% of what is going on with reason is a misuse of reason. And this is why he's critiquing it. Metaphysics is not okay. It's not, you're not allowed to do metaphysics. It's a bad use of reason. It's putting reason to the wrong task. Yeah. We can only do science with reason. And here I'm using reason kind of loosely in a way I probably shouldn't be. What I really mean is understanding, logical, what we might call rational. So that's why I was using it loosely. Because truly what reason is for Kant is what we might call like discernment of vocation. How to fulfill our callings in the right way. Like that's all that reason does. Reason is connected directly to purpose and vocation. So fulfilling our purposes in the right way is what reason does. The understanding does something different. It basically does copulas, combinations, connectings. So we draw things together and we connect them and we make sense of things with our understanding. The understanding for Kant is the categories, right? These 12 categories or these conceptual frameworks in which we can make judgments about sensible things. If we apply those concepts, our understanding, to super sensible things, things that cannot be sensed, we could also say infra-sensible, so things above and below the sensible. Above would be moral duties, things like the nature of the soul itself, the will, or the universe or cosmos as a whole. We cannot perceive the cosmos as a whole. We cannot perceive the soul. We cannot perceive our duties. But we have super sensible apprehension of them. But when we misunderstand our vocation, we fail to discern our calling and our purpose when we apply concepts to the supersensible or the infrasensible, which the infrasensible is something like the vital impulse or the vitality, our vitality. We cannot apply concepts to our vitality or our will. So the above and the below of the sensible. He talks about the, if anyone's interested, the vital and all of this infrasensible in the third critique, the second division of the third critique, where he talks about teleology, what he calls natural purposes. You could think here self-organization. Kant has an early theory of self-organization, autopoiesis, which he puts forward in the third critique. Very interesting. So reason is what gets us straight on our duties and our purposes and our vocations and our sort of orientedness in life. The first critique gets us straight that science is good, but it's very limited, and its concepts and its structures cannot be applied to metaphysical questions. Principles, right? So this book I was just mentioning, The Metaphysical Principles of Virtue, and we have this idea of principles in morality, like, our actions are based on principles, right? And those principles can be rendered as maxims. Principles cannot be understood using concepts. They can only be understood using reason, and reason in this more specific sense that I should have been more careful when we first started not to say reason. We cannot form a concept of the will. We cannot form a concept of goodness and goodwill. And yet that is the source, principle source of our action, moral action. We can't form concepts of the beautiful. So that's the third critique. And yet these are the things that guide us. And guide vocation, interest, purpose. This is what Kant is really most interested in. You kind of don't get that sense when you read the first critique, for instance, which seems very interested in, like, frankly, somewhat boring questions about epistemology. But he's really just clearing the way. I mean, this is what dialectic is. A dialectic is clearing away closing off the false paths and the false problems and all of the sort of pitfalls which accompany the facts of human life. He calls them natural illusions. So there's a natural illusion that we can form conceptual knowledge of metaphysical questions, that we can form scientific understanding of morality, a scientific understanding of the cosmos as a whole, scientific understanding of life, scientific understanding of dignity, human purpose, things like that. But we can't. So we have to go through the dialectic in order to close those things off. So he demotes dialectic in a way as preliminary, provisional, and Hegel disagrees with this. But we don't have to get into that. So that's kind of the general overview of Kantian philosophy, what it's doing, its multiplicity of stages. In the groundwork to the Metaphysic of Morals, Kant has a bone to pick with Aristotle, primarily. Happiness. No happiness. Happiness is associated with what he calls the agreeable. The agreeable is a really important idea in the third critique, where he contrasts it with the beautiful. So the agreeable is just pleasurable things through our senses. He's very unfair to Aristotle in this respect, and he doesn't like the idea that the vocation of humans is happiness. He doesn't think that human vocation is happiness. He thinks it's duty. And in this book, he talks about what he calls the architectonic. He loves this phrase. Sort of the grand view of any philosophical arena, you might think, being broken into the major categories of that. And so he's looking at duty, which he gets at through the Metaphysical Morals, and then he's kind of developing it further in this book. And duty is broken architectonically into duty towards oneself and then duty towards the other. And then we can break those down further. So there's duty towards oneself in multiple senses, and there's duty towards the other in multiple senses. We could think duty towards the world, the inanimate world, duty towards animals, and duty towards rational beings. And each one will be different. And so this is the architectonic view of things, according to Kant. And duty is the proper vocation of humans and is often at odds with happiness and the agreeable. It's oftentimes not agreeable. I mean, I think the sort of paradigmatic view for Kant of duty is this miser, unhappy old man who doesn't get enjoyment out of his daily life, doesn't get praise for the things he does. In fact, gets the opposite, right? And yet keeps going and serving. Like, he's really into like civic duties and things. So whatever this imaginary miser, we all will probably tend to think that maybe it's Kant himself. Whatever he's doing, it serves the public. It has a civic function. And there's no gratification. There's no agreeable related to this. There's nothing that induces pleasure. And yet, out of a sense of duty, and this isn't, he's very careful that duty is not dependent on social, cultural contexts. Now we can debate how possible that is, but for now, let's just assume that that's maybe possible in some sense. What we would have to do there is look at his idea of conscience, which is really important. He thinks that conscience has a supersensible source. He says that we feel that conscience is holy or divine or something, but he says we cannot know that it is. We cannot use concepts to say that God is talking to me. We can also not prove God's existence through the existence of conscience. But it's as if, and this as if is interesting, but he uses it a lot. It's as if God was telling us what is good and bad, but it's really our conscience. And we can unpack that more, but it's related to his idea of the transcendental ego, which is essentially that our most inner I, the ego, is atemporal, asubjective, like non-temporal, non-subjective, you could say impersonal, and we could say rational, but with the asterisk that rational does not mean logical. Rational means a clear sense of vocation and a clear sense of the means towards the means by which vocations are fulfilled. That's what reason is. And our conscience is goodwill. So this is how we sort of connect all of this detouring and that I've just done to the text that we were reading. The goodwill, he says, is the only thing that is good. Everything else is good indirectly and because of something else. The goodwill is the only thing directly good and good in itself and good because of itself. And goodwill has nothing to do with its outcomes, which would make goodwill dependent on something else, which the results, right? And he says it's not the what or the which, I guess, like what we are willing. It is how we are willing that makes it good. And because it's a how, it is sufficient. It's not dependent on the object of what it wills, right? But the how of how it wills. And this how of the goodwill is conscience, in a way. Okay, I've wandered quite a bit. Let's open up a little bit and see where you all are